Mr. Parker gave a forced smile, breaking the awkward silence. Well, since we can't communicate with trees, no matter how curious we are, we can't exactly ask them anything. After that, the group continued deeper into the heart of the capital city. Kai seemed to be searching for something important. Suddenly, she stepped forward and called out to Stio. She asked with a curious expression, "Do you know where we're supposed to meet the quest giver?" Stio nodded slightly and replied, "Yes." Hearing that, Kai immediately made a suggestion. "Since we still have a few days before the deadline, why don't we rest today?" Stio looked curious at Kai's suggestion. "Is there a particular reason?" Kai carefully elaborated on her request. "It's best if we postpone the meeting, to give us time to prepare our fighting force." It wasn't until Kai mentioned this that Stio suddenly exclaimed as if remembering something. In that moment, Stio suddenly remembered the two GA agents, exclaiming in surprise, "I assigned him this mission myself, because I suddenly remembered that I promised to contact him as soon as I needed him." Immediately after, Kai turned, addressing the person beside him by their full name. Bernie Parker was startled at being addressed so formally. He exclaimed in a panicked voice. The female commander asked him in a firm tone, "Do you know where the XNIS branch in Ely is located?" Regaining his composure, he answered her, "I make deliveries there every year, so I know the place very well." She immediately gave the order. "Then I'll leave the rest to you." Receiving the order, Bernie Parker immediately saluted, obeying with a serious demeanor. Suddenly, he realized something and spoke up. "But what about you, Guy?" She turned gracefully, revealing her plan. "There's someone I need to see." With that, she blended into the crowd, disappearing from sight. "Go ahead. I'll be fine." With that, she turned and walked away. The young woman's small figure gradually disappeared, blending into the bustling crowd in the heart of the flourishing city. Time passed silently, waiting for no one. From a moment the sunset descended, painting the sky crimson, until the pitch-black night enveloped everything. And then dawn arrived again, the morning light creeping into every corner of the benefit committee building. Eli Branch. Mr. Keogh was sitting on a chair when he saw CO walk by and called out to him. "Hey, where are you going?" Meticulously buttoning his cloak, CO replied, "I heard the committee has a department that handles information management." Hearing CO's words, he immediately jumped up, his face full of excitement. "The information management team? Ah, are you trying to find out about Chairman Jin's case? Oh my gosh, you should have told me sooner. This is the captain's support team's job." CO stepped back slightly, a look of embarrassment on his face, and hurriedly refused. "No, it's not necessary." But Parker didn't seem to pay any attention to CO's words. He ran up the stairs as he spoke to him. "Please stay right here. I'll contact the communications team immediately." The boy stared blankly, watching the man rush off, feathers falling from him like snow, only managing to let out a gasp of "ah" before falling silent. STO watched helplessly, his eyes following the feathers drifting in the air. He softly called Uru, then asked, "Hey Nizu, do you know?" Nizu innocently replied, "Know what?" His gaze turned towards the pigeons, soaring freely across the clear blue sky. Haru continued his story. Every time a pigeon flaps its wings, hundreds of lice fall from its feathers. STO quickly cautioned Haru, "If you keep saying things like that, I'm afraid people will avoid you in the future." Hearing that, a subtle sadness washed over Haru. The boy quickly blurted out, "I'm sorry." Seeing Ahuru's reaction, STO thought to himself, I mean, what if Parker ends up disliking him because of this? I think I just put my foot in my mouth. I wish I hadn't said that. Lost in thought, STO was startled when Parker brought Skyla in. Parker's expression was clearly brimming with joy. "Captain, I've brought them here," Parker reported. Skyla immediately stood at attention and offered a respectful salute. "Hello." She introduced herself politely. "I'm the team leader of the Senior Information Management Department. Skyla. It's a pleasure to meet you, Captain." After the greetings, Skyla and STO sat down to discuss business. "What information are you looking for?" she asked. STO immediately replied, "I'm looking for two things." Hearing that, Skyla asked further, "Can we discuss that information here?" "One of them, yes," he answered. After the greetings, they got straight to the point. "So, can you elaborate on the issue?" Skyla inquired. "I understand you're looking for someone." Hearing that, she handed Stio a form and asked him to fill it out. "We understand. Please describe the characteristics of the person you're looking for on this form." "The person you want to find." Stio immediately took the paper and quickly filled in all the necessary information. Name, gender, age, hair color, eye color. Parker observed from the side, wondering to himself, how does he know when Rin didn't provide any descriptive information. I bet the captain will know right away. It won't take long. Stio finished filling out the information. Skyla then spoke. I'll skip the other paperwork, since this isn't an official request. She added, all right, so then, let's change locations and continue this unfinished conversation. Suddenly, 3 shadowy figures materialized out of thin air, bursting through the door without a second thought. Not only that, but they also violently smashed a potted plant. Witnessing the chaotic scene, everyone in the room was stunned, unsure of what was happening. All stared at the 3 strangers with bewildered and shocked expressions. The 3 menacing figures, with murderous looks on their faces, slowly stepped inside. It seemed Estro recognized them. He thought about the ballista gang he had encountered in Ranger Village. Meanwhile, the waiter's face was filled with panic and worry. He stammered, what are you doing here? One of the men, annoyed, barked, what? He slammed his hand on the table and growled. What kind of stupid question is that? Faced with their aggression, the terrified waiter clutched his head and screamed. Another one of them sneered, oh, please. What do you think we're doing in a tavern? We came here to make a request and expect an answer from it. We demand a clear response. Regaining his composure, the new attendant spoke up. I'm sorry, but with that emblem, you're not members of Ballista in SAO. The man in the middle crossed his arms, a smug look on his face. So you recognize us? It seems even the infamous Laughing Coffin pays some attention to a small guild like ours. The attendant quickly denied it. Sir, I apologize for the misunderstanding, but Laughing Coffin does not accept requests from other guilds. As soon as he finished speaking, his face darkened, a furious expression taking over. The attendant responded again. I sincerely apologize for having to refuse your request. We already have a prior engagement. If you could, please come back another time. Before he could finish, they roared in indignation. Aren't we customers of SAO? That's right. Are you discriminating against us? Their demands unmet. They grew aggressive and started causing a ruckus. We made it clear that we would pay in full and gave them specific instructions. Yet, witnessing the chaotic scene unfold, Stio thought to himself how incredibly rude and boorish they were. However, I didn't sense any real malice from them. It seemed like the baristas had misunderstood the waiter. He quickly tried to explain, hoping to calm their fury. What I'm trying to say, sir, is that we cannot accept demands from members of other guilds. This rule applies to all guilds, not just Znais. This policy applies to all guilds, not just Znais. Before he could finish, one of the men unleashed a stream of vulgar curses. Our lives are being threatened, he shouted, inciting the others. Get your guild leader here now. Seeing their aggressive behavior, the young clerk looked flustered. He tried to calm the crowd with a gentle voice. Everyone, please remain calm. Calm? How can we be calm in this situation? A man snapped. They yelled, then swept all the papers on the desk onto the floor, creating a chaotic mess. Sensing the escalating tension, Estio stood up, intending to intervene. She thought to herself, it seems like they really need someone's help right now. I need to assess the situation. Estio pondered for a moment. Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out, interrupting her thoughts. Rule violation. Hearing this, Estio turned her head, searching for the source of the voice. She looked towards the woman who had just spoken. The woman continued, coldly listing the offenses of the 3 men. They have caused property damage, disruption of business operations. Estio realized it was Burang. A menacing aura emanated from her. Burang slowly stepped forward, her voice steady. According to the union's regulations, once a member sets foot inside a branch headquarters, is a branch of another guild. Her eyes responded with a cold, sharp glare, a gesture seen as a provocation. As soon as she finished speaking, she immediately gathered her strength. Estio, witnessing the scene, was momentarily stunned. Buran called out to him. Without hesitation, she thrust her spear forward. She exclaimed, annihilate. And her target was the one who had just been yelling so boisterously a moment ago. But surprisingly, in that split second, Estio suddenly appeared, shielding the man. His actions startled Buran. She quickly diverted the spear's trajectory. Just before it impaled Estio, the spear plunged into the ground. Thankfully, no one was injured. Afterwards, they both stared at each other, neither saying a word. Suddenly, Burang asked, what's he doing here? Estio remained silent, offering no reply. The faces of the 2 men behind them were filled with confusion. One of them spoke up. What the hell is going on, girl? She's a true battle mage. Estio replied. Then, John Biryong gripped her spear tightly and demanded, "Have you been following me all the way here? I recall making it clear that I don't want to work with you." Hearing this, Estio spoke up. "You were about to kill that man." Biryong showed no remorse, instead justifying herself. "They're intruders from another guild." He countered, "We could have just chased them away peacefully." John Biryong remained firm in her stance, retorting, "Killing them is much more efficient." Estio posed a pointed question. Were their actions truly wrong enough to warrant death? Biryong pointed her spear at Estio and said coldly, "They're just trash that needs to be cleaned up. Someone has to do it. I didn't ask for your interference. Get out of my way, coward." Witnessing this, a guild member, Ballista, stepped forward, pushing Esther aside. He said, "I was going to let this go, but aren't you taking this a bit too far? I can't believe the guild, known as the greatest in the Empire, has such terrible customer service." Another member of the guild also expressed his discontent. He spoke up, "Let's go." Then he glanced at John Biryong and said in a disappointed tone, "We really came here to register a request, not to cause trouble." Hearing that, she showed no remorse and instead pressed the tip of her spear closer to his throat. The ballistic guild member continued, "So, if you don't put that damn spear down, we'll have to draw our swords too." By now, the other man was completely enraged. The two men glared at each other, their eyes burning with murderous intent. Tension filled the air. A fight seemed imminent. Seeing this, Estio quickly intervened, urging everyone to lower their weapons. Biryong reacted fiercely, stepping back and shouting, "You're not the leader. How dare you order me around?" Suddenly, a look of shock crossed Birang's face. She seemed to reach for her staff, but couldn't touch it. Biryong panicked, her eyes darting around. Without warning, Birang's staff had been moved to the corner of the room. She gasped in astonishment. Just now, what was that? Birang's fury seemed to reach its peak. She angrily yelled for Estio. Then, in a fit of rage, Biryong lunged forward, grabbing Estio by the collar and screaming in frustration, "What did you do to me?" Hearing this, Estio didn't answer, only silently stared at her. Biryong continued to press him. "Your power, it's not just reading minds, is it?" She continued, her voice laced with suspicion. "Ew, you're not human. If you're not human." While Estio was trying to get more information out of Sushio, Birang's spear suddenly moved from behind, its sharp tip aimed directly at her. Witnessing this, a member of the Ballistic Guild hurriedly shouted a warning. "Look out! Estio, danger!" Niju also gasped in shock. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared, swinging a sword with a powerful slash into the space between them. They all narrowly avoided the fatal attack. Still reeling from the shock, Biryong hadn't yet recovered. When she realized the person who had just intervened was Duke Hyga, the young Duke smiled, teasing, "Hold on there, firecracker." He then walked over, put his arm around Estio familiarly, and continued, "If this man gets even a scratch, I will be truly angry." Hyga's eyes flashed with a cold glint. "And you wouldn't want to see me when I'm angry," he asserted. Hearing this, John Biryong gripped her staff tightly, a wave of astonishment washing over her. "I didn't even sense him approach," she thought to herself. She approached Hyga, her voice sharp. "Who are you?" The young man smiled. "Me? I'm a combat member of the leader support team." Biryong interrupted. "I heard the leader support team doesn't have combat members, so you have them now." Hyga calmly explained. "It's only temporary. My circumstances prevent me from officially joining the guild." Biryong's anger flared. "You're helping him? You're on his side? Do you know what kind of monster he is?" Hyga's eyebrows rose in disbelief. "Monster? It seems you attacked him simply because he possesses different abilities." He pointed towards Pyokyo, who stood there bewildered, clearly lost amidst the confrontation. "Then why didn't you attack the gentleman with the wings?" His appearance was truly bizarre, unlike any ordinary human. Witnessing this, Parker stammered, "I'm human, a normal person. While phoenixes might be considered a distant branch of humanity, we still carry human blood within us." Hearing this, Hyga seemed unconcerned and continued, "Furthermore, your large friend over there carries the blood of an ape, with pure white fur and the form of a human. So, are you only going to eliminate half of his body?" Nizu also intervened. "Don't bully Estio." Hyga calmly continued, "As you can see, this world is diverse, far richer than you can imagine. If you cling to your prejudices, you'll never recognize the wonders that exist." Despite Birang's darkening expression, he continued his lecture. "Don't be so arrogant. Your mission isn't to judge or decide the fate of others." Just as John predicted, Biryong turned and left in a fit of anger. Without even looking back, I really don't understand what just happened. But it seemed things had calmed down for now, returning to peace. Hyga spoke to SDO, his voice gentle. Then SDO replied, expressing his sincere gratitude for Hyga's timely assistance. Afterward, his gaze turned towards the member of the Ballista Guild, a curious expression on his face. SDO asked, "So what brings you here?" The man who had just gotten up hesitated for a moment before answering. "Well, actually, our Ballista Guild is facing the threat of disbandment." He spoke with a sorrowful tone, his face etched with worry. "The Ballista Guild is on the verge of collapse," he repeated, as if to emphasize the critical situation. His voice grew heavy, filled with distress. "We were deceived by a gambling quest that's been circulating recently, and now the guild is about to declare bankruptcy." SDO was startled and quickly asked, "A gambling quest? What's that?" The other man immediately explained in detail. "It's a scam targeting smaller guilds like ours. Recently, they offered a huge quest with an incredibly generous reward but riddled with danger. If it's not completed, they collect a massive cancellation fee." SDO couldn't help but feel suspicious and curious. "You accepted the quest without knowing how dangerous it was." He hung his head, remorse evident on his face. "We all understand that, but the reward is too tempting to refuse." He clenched his fists, trembling uncontrollably. "And recently, we heard that the guild leader has failed 7 times since returning to the capital." His comrades beside him were also dejected, heads bowed in sorrow. The man suddenly became gloomy and turned to leave. "What good is it telling a rookie like you all of this? I apologize for bothering you. I'll be going now." Watching their figures disappear, Mabian curiously asked, "Why didn't you tell them you're the commander?" Stio replied, "No, I didn't want to intrude on their personal matters." Biak eagerly ran up to greet them. "It's been a while, Mabian. I thought it would take you much longer to travel through so many transfer gates. I didn't expect you to arrive so quickly." Mabian replied, "The 1 gate per day rule is really just a suggestion." He continued to explain thoroughly that one simply had to accept all potential risks and agree not to sue for anything if they experience side effects. Anyone could use more gates than the permitted number. Parker suddenly froze, his face stunned. "Wait, don't tell me you use 2 gates a day?" Mubayan casually held up 4 fingers, replying, "No, I travel through 4. Parker gasped, exclaiming, "What?" Mubayan calmly explained in detail. "I had a few matters to attend to before leaving the station for a while. But I found time was of the essence, so I decided to come directly here. The longer I waited, the more news of my location would spread." Parker, a mixture of confusion and worry in his voice, asked him, "But I think you should get a medical checkup. Should I call the medical team?" Mubayan let out a hearty laugh, reassuring him, "I'm fine." "Fine? What do you mean fine?" SDO suddenly interrupted. "We're not going anywhere today." Suddenly, a figure approached the group. It was Skyla. She carried a stack of documents and greeted everyone. "Thank you for waiting patiently. We should find somewhere else to continue this conversation." With that, she gestured with her hand, inviting everyone to follow her upstairs. SDO slowly ascended the stairs. Suddenly, he stopped and looked back at Niju. "Could you go back to the room with Parker and wait for us for a bit?" The boy obediently replied, "Yes, sir." Uhuru suddenly spoke up. "What? Where are you guys going without me?" SDO firmly stated, "That's right, you can't come." Uhuru's face fell, and he let out a long sigh. SDO gently explained, "I know you're curious, but this is going to be very boring and not exciting at all. What do you want to know? I don't want you to have to listen to this." Uhuru was sweating, waving his small hands. "I'll wait, but you have to come back quickly." SDO smiled, agreeing to his request. They quickly entered a secluded room. The large room was filled with thousands of books of all sizes. Mubin hesitated, then asked SDO, "Do you mind if I listen in?" SDO immediately replied, "Sure, no problem." He gestured to the chair beside him and leisurely sat down. He got straight to the point. "I want you to investigate Sahanan." SDO continued, his tone serious. "I hear he's residing in the Eastern continent, and rumor has it he's going to be the next pope. He may be in possession of a golden artifact." Skylar, understanding his intent, quickly searched for a document. "As you know, Sahanan is a person of considerable interest." She handed the document to him. "This is the latest report, updated just today." Skylar added, "I'll forward the full report to you, Chief. After you finish reading it, burn it. Don't return it." She spoke with a deadly serious expression. "Although we don't have concrete proof yet, it's possible Sahanan will try to contact the guild soon." The Ballista Guild revealed they were threatened and forced to disband before, didn't they? Skylar said, his voice grave and suggestive. "The Zai's Guild. believes the mastermind behind the betting requirements, aiming to absorb the disbanded guilds. To consolidate their power and influence is Sahanin. She was sweating as she mentioned the name. And in the worst-case scenario, if all of this is a plot to destroy the Zai's guild, her words left Stio utterly astonished. A war is about to break out. After their secret conversation in the private room, Estio and Mabian finally left. Mabian, as he walked, curiously asked about Sahanin's true identity. Estio didn't hide anything and answered him frankly, a dragon. Mubayan was stunned by the unbelievable information. He hesitantly asked, "You're not joking, are you?" Estio calmly replied, as if it were nothing out of the ordinary. "It's not that strange." "I don't." Mubayan fell into deep thought, then slowly said, "Well, if the black dragon truly exists, then the appearance of another dragon isn't surprising." But he suddenly froze as he thought about the coincidental timing. "It's too much of a coincidence." Estio suddenly spoke with a hidden meaning. "I heard he deeply hates the black dragon." He calmly continued, "The reason he's targeting the guild might be because of me." Mubayan abruptly stopped, asking suspiciously, "So, are you going to leave the guild?" Hearing no footsteps in response, Estio also stopped, turning around to answer, "I haven't decided yet." Mubayan said sadly, "So you've thought about it then? What if that golden dragon is really after you?" Suddenly, a surge of anger welled up inside him, and he questioned Astio. Can this problem truly be solved simply by leaving the guild? Astio remained calm, replying, "At the very least, it would remove the catalyst for a war." Mubayan frowned, raising his voice. "Don't you want to stay in the Aincrad Knights Guild?" He clenched his fists, his face filled with frustration. "You just don't want a war to break out." As if he had made up his mind, Mubayan suddenly knelt before Astio, a gesture of deep respect. He spoke solemnly. "Command me. What do you wish your servant to do?" Astio was taken aback by Mubayan's actions, quickly reaching out to stop him. "I didn't call you here to ask for any favors. We simply need a member to join our fighting force." Astio continued, "The reason I let you hear about the Holy Dragon is because I suddenly remembered you were searching for the mark of the dragon." Mubayan's face suddenly darkened, his voice turning serious. "The traces we've been searching for all this time. We finally found them." His words made Estio pause for a moment. In a grand, ancient building, an energetic voice rang out. "Good morning." Kai greeted everyone with a bright smile. "All right, speaking of which, this is the first time we've officially met. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mubayan." He leisurely took a sip of fragrant coffee and said playfully, "Calling me so casually on our first meeting?" Kai chuckled, playing along. "I do so because I know you're intentionally hiding your true identity." Mubayan placed his coffee cup on the table and continued, "Although this building is yours, seeing all the automatons on high alert, I pretended not to notice." He rested his chin on his hand, putting on a mischievous expression. "Then I should call you Guildmaster, shouldn't I?" Kai chuckled, offering a gentle warning. "Just call me Kai." Mabian replied with a friendly smile. "Then call me Mabian." Suddenly, a figure entered, accompanied by the cold, mechanical voice of the AI. "And next up, another idiot has arrived. It's AI." Estio, holding a Huru in his arms, entered Kai's room with Nizu. "You're here," Kai exclaimed, turning to greet them. "I tried to get back before Mabian joined the group. Sorry I'm late. Seems like our combat member is quite agile." Suddenly, she paused, her gaze fixed on something strange. Kai stared at the bandaged wound on Estio's hand. Her eyes filled with worry. "The wound on your hand. What happened while I was gone?" Kai looked at Ahuru, nestled in Estio's arms, and asked, "Did you give Ahuru your blood again?" Estio admitted, "Yeah, he stopped drinking water a while ago." Ahuru stirred in Estio's arms, chirping happily, appearing to be full of energy. "I feel full of energy." Kai pondered for a moment, then gently advised Estio, "It's hard to think of it as an ordinary plant, so it's best to limit its regular blood consumption." Without further ado, Kai turned and suggested, "Let's go to meet the client who entrusted us with the task in the bustling uptown district." The Stio group strode joyfully down the street. Parker suddenly turned to Mabian and asked, "Mr. Mabian, would you mind meeting the requester?" He leaned back, his expression indifferent. I don't mind." Then he sighed. "There's only one person in the royal city that I wouldn't want to meet." Mabian closed his eyes and continued indifferently, "I don't have a grudge against anyone in the royal family. The requester we're meeting today probably doesn't even know me." After traveling for a while, they arrived at a house with a vibrant flower garden. "We're here. A lovely house," secluded amidst the bustling city. They quickly made their way inside the house. The wind chimes hanging on the door announced their arrival, their clear sound like a welcoming invitation. A young woman with vibrant green hair, holding a bouquet of fresh flowers, greeted them with a radiant smile. "Welcome, I am Lantana from Evergreen Hill. What kind of flower are you looking for?" Estio stepped forward and replied, "We have come to see the crystal flower. Please lead us to the hill where it grows." Lantana maintained her bright smile and gently asked, "Do you have an invitation?" Estio promptly presented an iron card and answered, "Yes." After confirming the invitation, Lantana gestured with her eyes. "Please come inside and wait a moment." Estio's group followed Lantana's guidance, stepping into the room. The moment they entered, someone quickly drew the curtains closed, shrouding the room in darkness. A line of people with stern expressions stood guard along the pathway. Ma Bian glanced at them, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. They were all prestigious knights. Then he turned his gaze to Lantana, who was preparing to unlock the room with a dubious look. Could their guide really be a maid? Inside the room, a vibrant vase of flowers was on display. Lantana nimbly poured tea, inviting everyone to enjoy. She lifted the teapot, smiling brightly. "This is Locusta tea. It sharpens the mind and awakens the senses. This flower has a flavor similar to mint, so it will chase away any drowsiness." Parker was the first to lift his cup. His face contorted, as if he wanted to spit it out immediately. "The taste, it's so strong," Lantana asked solicitously. Feeling more awake now, she couldn't help but be surprised when she saw Estio take a sip of the tea with a completely nonchalant air. You don't seem fazed at all. Most people find it quite unpleasant on their first try." Estio calmly replied, "I know a candy that tastes similar." His words delighted Lantana, and she exclaimed, "A candy that tastes like the sea?" She eagerly moved closer to Estio and pressed him with questions. "Is it a specialty from Delphia? It's that taste of the ocean, isn't it?" Slightly surprised, Estio responded, "Yes, it is." Lantana's face lit up with joy as she grasped Estio's hand. "This candy is quite unique, so it's rare to find someone who recognizes its distinct flavor. It's wonderful to meet a kindred spirit." Mubin's patience wore thin, and he urged, "So, my lady, please get to the point." His words snapped Lantana back to reality. She quickly released Estio's hand and exclaimed, "Oh my, I've digressed again." She politely greeted them. "I am Lantana, Crown Princess of the Marissa Empire. Unable to leave the Imperial Palace, I have come at my father's behest to deliver this request." She directed her gaze towards Estio. "Let me be clear, I understand that Chairman Ignis possesses the ability of foresight, allowing him to see into the hearts of others." Lantana held up 3 fingers, slowly explaining, "When the princess questions the 3 of them, you simply need to accompany the princess and listen carefully to their answers. I will ask questions and observe carefully to determine if their words are true." Sounds simple enough, yet effective, wouldn't you say, leader? Lantana flashed a graceful smile, her voice a gentle inquiry. Doubt not at Stio, a flicker of unease in his heart. "After you verified, what becomes of their fate?" Lantana paused, a moment of thoughtful silence before answering Stio. "If they confess truthfully, they will be treated fairly and humanely. But those who dare deceive the royal family," her eyes turned icy, a hint of ferocity in their depths, "will pay with their lives. Of course, you are no exception." Her words hung in the air, the elegant smile still gracing her lips, as a chilling silence descended upon the room. Mubayan felt a surge of injustice, lamenting internally. So that means the leader is just a pawn in this political game? The rumors of a righteous and just princess seem to be nothing but empty words. Like father, like daughter, as they say. Stio didn't hesitate. His decision made swiftly. "I agree to your terms." Mubayan was startled by Stio's answer, astonishment flooding his senses. Lantana placed her hands on her hips, her displeasure evident. "I thought you'd hesitate. I didn't expect you to agree so quickly. How can someone be so fearless?" Estio, his expression unchanged, countered, "What should I be afraid of?" Lantana slammed her hand on the table, startling the young commander. "I urge you to reconsider your decision." She sternly questioned him. "Are you confident enough to complete this mission without displeasing the princess?" Instead of answering directly, Estio posed a question of his own. "First, I'd like to ask something." His gaze seemed to pierce through everything, looking directly at her. "This question, are you asking as the princess of the empire, Estio stared intently at Lantana, continuing, or, as Chief Princess Marissa? His words left Lantana momentarily speechless. The teacup she was holding slipped from her grasp, spilling onto the table, shattering the silence. Parker, flustered, stammered an apology. I'm so sorry. My hand was shaking. I'll clean it up right away. Suddenly, Lantana spoke, breaking the silence. I knew it, she exclaimed, hand to her chest in a gesture of triumphant joy. The rumors were true after all. You just read my mind, didn't you? Precisely. Lantana is the name I was given at birth. My mother gave me that name because my appearance was as pure and innocent as the white lantana flowers. She removed her hair clip, her gaze sincere and serious. My true name is Marissa Estroborzan Aconia. Her azure hair began to transform, radiating a brilliant, shimmering gold, a magical, color-changing display. Lantana had returned to her true form, the noble and powerful Princess Marissa. I'm the one who summoned you all here. Marissa continued, her tone clear and resolute, conveying her purpose. Currently, I am searching for the one who betrayed His Majesty, the Emperor. Although the list of suspects has been narrowed down to 3, we still haven't gathered enough concrete evidence. She spoke gravely. If the royal family openly suspects them without proof, the consequences will be severe and unpredictable. Marissa raised a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. This top-secret mission requires absolute discretion, so I cannot give orders as the Crown Princess. Marissa Stillo looked up, her eyes probing. I've agreed to your request. So tell me, whose thoughts do I need to read? Marissa then listed several powerful figures. Count Endymion, Duke Delphia, and someone closely connected to Marissa, the 5th prince of the Jialu Empire. Ruberazin Akidian returned to his lavish estate. Mabian gasped in astonishment at the names on the target list. Unbelievable. The imperial princess suspects her own brother, Prince Jialu. He lightly touched a small flower, his tone laced with sarcasm. Well, it's not surprising. A family rotten to the core. Ahuru snapped irritably. Don't touch that flower. It doesn't like to be disturbed. He hopped around incessantly, expressing his utter indignation. Mobin paid him no mind, his gaze fixed on Estio. Master Estio, is it possible that this crystal flower is expressing its dislike for me? Estio shook his head. I'm not sure. I don't have the ability to hear the voices of plants, unless they choose to speak to me. Mobin teased to her. See? It's not saying anything. Ahur flushed crimson, practically combusting from the teasing. What? Just because it doesn't speak up doesn't mean you can just touch it carelessly. How can you disregard the rights of plants like that? He raised an eyebrow, continuing his provocation. Do plants have human rights too? Ahur grew even angrier. Yes, they do. I know you're deliberately teasing me. Mobin stopped teasing him, his tone turning serious. Estio, he asked, more importantly, will things really be alright? The Imperial Palace will be nothing short of a battlefield. Stio remained calm, not responding to him. As long as I'm a member of the guild, I will complete the mission, whether I want to or not. Explain yourself thoroughly, because the guild has allowed me to stay here. Outside, the sky suddenly darkened. Raindrops began to fall. Soon it was pouring. A drop of water slipped through a crack in the window, landing on Ahuru's head, making him yell. It's cold. He quickly looked up at the windowsill, crying out urgently. Our crystal flower is going to be ruined by the rain. Someone bring it inside. A kind girl passing by, about to bring the small potted plant inside, was suddenly surprised when she saw something. The color of the tiny flower was changing from white to purple, making her exclaim, this is a flower that changes color when exposed to water. That's why it's called a crystal flower. Amazing. Estio gently approached, cradling the small flower pot in his arms, piquing Mobian's curiosity. Are you going to bring it inside? Estio's gaze drifted towards the window, where the rain was pouring down in sheets. His voice was soft as he explained, I think it's afraid of the sound of the rain. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoed, shattering the quiet atmosphere. We give thanks, O lassie to the Black Clan. The strange, authoritative voice startled Estio, leaving him speechless. Parker, worried, quickly asked, Hey, with the rain coming down so hard, will Suki be alright? Seeing Estio remain silent, not responding, Parker moved closer to him. Master Estio, are you okay? Estio finally snapped out of it, softly replying, Suki is very afraid of water. I'm sure it will be back soon. Parker understood, but still seemed hesitant, apprehensive. Well, that's good. But He looked out at the pitch-black sky, the heavy raindrops relentlessly falling. "This weather is terrible," Parker exclaimed with a sigh. "It makes me a little worried." Time passed relentlessly, stretching into what felt like an eternity. Parker, unable to bear the boredom any longer, let out a frustrated yell. Good heavens! Has it been raining for a solid week? His misery overwhelmed him, and he burst into tears. Mubin remained calm, gently explaining to Parker, "It's the monsoon season, so it'll likely continue for another 2 or 3 weeks." Watching the relentless downpour, Parker's despair deepened, and his sobs grew louder. Suddenly, a carriage slowly approached, immediately catching his attention. Well, a sharply dressed gentleman is leisurely driving a carriage. Nearing the building, Byakjo hurriedly announced to everyone, "Buka Byakjo." It seems the invitation has arrived. His words stunned everyone into silence. Byakjo quickly ran to the door. "I'll go inform Kai myself." The small flower pot spoke up. "I want to go too." One by one, everyone left the room. Only Estio remained, staring at the strange flower pot. Confused, Niju turned back, urging him, "Let's go." "Neju, Niju." The small flower pot pleaded once more. "Please take me with you. I wish to meet her." The words left the young man speechless, his eyes wide with surprise. Moments later, in the grand waiting hall, a knight with a stern expression entered and announced himself. "I am a knight in service to the crown princess of this great empire. Talanda Zabairo is my name." The knight meticulously detailed the upcoming events. Upon entering the royal carriage, you will assume the roles of members of a secret society, entrusted with the protection of the renowned Duke Gallia. Talon continued, painting a picture of the bustling ball soon to take place. The Duke will be attending the Crown Princess's birthday celebration. The knight frowned, his expression grave, and warned, should you cause any disturbance, even the slightest, within this magnificent palace, the royal family will not be able to guarantee your safety. He then asked, his voice booming, "Do you truly wish to undertake this task?" Stio stepped forward, answering the knight. "We accept the responsibility." SJO and the others eagerly chimed in. "Let us depart at once." Moments later, the procession was escorted to a magnificent, imposing castle. The carriage glided through the pouring rain, heading straight towards the castle. Inside the castle, a breathtaking flower garden unfolded before everyone's eyes. "I will lead you to the Crown Princess's garden." Everyone gasped in unison, their eyes widening in astonishment. Parker exclaimed in awe, staring at the enormous dome. Outside this dome, the rain is still pouring down, as if we were standing inside a waterfall. Marissa, in a splendid gown, stepped out to greet everyone. "You have arrived." Mabian knelt, bowing respectfully in response. "Glory to the sun that illuminates the empire, and to its children. I greet the Crown Princess." That should be my line. He then lifted his head and asked tentatively, "But this greeting seems a bit lacking in emotion, doesn't it? If outsiders were to see this, do you really think this is the first time we've met?" Marissa flashed a charming smile, replying to him in the grand hall of the palace. "It's always best to be cautious, Duke Mabian." Mabian understood, nodding slightly. "If that is the princess's wish." Suddenly, Marissa's expression changed, her face darkening. "Very well. I warn you. From now on, you must obey my commands without question." Marissa's sudden shift in demeanor caused the surrounding crowd to freeze, silent for a moment. Marissa couldn't hold it in any longer and burst into laughter. She waved her hand dismissively, a bright smile on her face. "I was just joking. Don't worry so much." Marissa chuckled, returning to her usual cheerful demeanor, then turned to instruct her maid. "We're about to receive some rather cunning nobles, so it wouldn't do to be too stiff. Benzia, serve the tea. Prepare the tea and refreshments for the guests. Bring them here quickly." The maid understood, responding respectfully, "Yes, Your Highness." Immediately, a beautiful cake was presented on the banquet table. Sweet, fragrant pastries were presented one after another. Marissa gracefully lifted her teacup, reassuring everyone, "Don't worry, this is just a simple birthday party. Although I'm not quite used to these kinds of gatherings myself, so I'm a little nervous." Hearing that, Mabian thought to himself, "Now that I think about it, I've never heard of the Crown Princess participating in any noble social events." He glanced at Marissa, who was chatting away, then silently mused. She was once endlessly praised for her noble virtues, due to her frequent charitable activities, helping the common people outside the palace. I can understand this, because she receives immense support. Although I heard she renounced her claim to the throne, but typically, princesses, while the prince still seemed wary. Marissa smiled, kindly asking them, "How are you both feeling? Are you more comfortable now?" Suddenly, the uncle yawned widely, with a confused expression. "I don't feel anxious or uneasy at all. Why am I so sleepy?" He suddenly looked at Marissa, startled, and quickly apologized. Forgive me, Your Highness. I have been disrespectful in your presence." Marissa calmly replied, unconcerned, "It's all right, don't worry. In the tea, there's a calming herb that soothes the mind and relieves all tension in the body." Mu Bayan's face showed a hint of surprise, and he asked urgently, "You mean you drugged the tea?" Marissa gently explained, "I only used ingredients that are beneficial to one's health. You don't need to look at me with such suspicion." Mu Bayan breathed a sigh of relief, his expression relaxing. "Oh, I see. I meant no threat to the princess. I beg your pardon for my abruptness." Marissa toyed with the teacup in her hand, seemingly unconcerned, and said casually, "No, I understand. I don't blame you for being cautious when you hear that the tea you're drinking contains an unusual ingredient. This is an herbal tea made primarily from the leaves of a flower, cultivated in a specially controlled environment." Suddenly, she exclaimed, "It's called tula. However, it has a potent stimulating effect, causing any animal that consumes it to become overly excited." Her words made Nizu pause. He suddenly realized his tea was entirely different. Marissa took a long, comfortable sip of her tea, then continued, "But for us humans, it's a perfectly safe plant. It has a calming effect, relaxing tense muscles. The knights also frequently drink this tea during their rest periods." She suddenly looked in a meaningful direction and continued, "The Znai's Guild will forever be a loyal friend to the royal family, for they found the answer within the mystical labyrinth." Estio curiously asked her, "So all the flowers you use to make tea, are they all grown by your own hand? Do you love flowers that much?" Marissa confided in her passion, her eyes becoming unusually soft and affectionate. "Of course, I've met countless people and beasts, but no living being is as sincere as flowers. However, flowers cannot speak, so at first I found it a bit difficult, but one doesn't have to worry about their behavior or hide their true intentions in front of flowers. Because they can't speak, I can delude myself into thinking they adore me. That's why I'm so passionate about flowers." She suddenly paused, lost in thought. Why did I just say all of that? Could this be the miraculous effect of tula tea? Marissa suddenly realized she had spoken out of turn. She quickly stood up and gracefully suggested, "It seems everyone is feeling more relaxed now, so let's conclude our greetings here. Let's prepare for tonight's feast. What do you all say? Taryn, please lead the way for everyone." Taryn quickly replied, "Yes, Your Highness." Everyone followed Marissa's lead and left the garden one by one. Only Estio lingered, seemingly lost in thought, his gaze sweeping across the garden. Suddenly, he called out to Marissa. He stepped forward and offered her the small flower pot. "I'd like to return this flower to you." Marissa asked in surprise, "Oh my, don't you like this flower? You own a cactus, so I assumed you like plants." Estio immediately countered Marissa's words. "This flower is beautiful." He explained everything thoroughly, "but I think it's best to return it to its rightful owner, rather than keeping it." Marissa accepted the flower pot back. Estio turned and walked away, blending into the crowd. "I'll excuse myself to prepare as you instructed." Marissa stood silently, gazing at the small flower pot in her hands. The flower seemed happy to be back with her. Then she looked towards Estio's fading figure, thinking to herself, "Estio, he seems more special than I thought." Moments later, as they entered the main hall, Nizu raised an eyebrow and let out a regretful sigh. "It's a shame that Nizu can't go with everyone, but I wish you all a wonderful trip." Ahuru chimed in, "Remember to bring back souvenirs for me." Suddenly, the whirlwind boy looked around and asked, "But where's the tiger?" Estio suddenly remembered and exclaimed, "Oh." Nizu also remembered Suki, saying worriedly, "Nizu is very worried about him. Suki is so late. What if he's been kidnapped?" Ahuru let out a sigh, frustration evident on his face. "Good heavens, this is the last thing we need to worry about right now." Ma Bian asked with concern, "Are you all right, Stio?" Stio replied, trying to reassure everyone, "I'll be fine, don't worry." The group quickly entered the banquet hall. A servant bowed respectfully, guiding them. "This way, please." Inside, the room was lavishly decorated with extravagant furnishings, exuding elegance. Nobles in magnificent attire chatted politely, their laughter echoing throughout the hall. Suddenly, the entire hall buzzed with excitement at the appearance of the strangers. "Oh my, the rumors were true," Sko exclaimed in astonishment. "Duke Mabian himself is attending the party. But why this party? Of all the parties?" Whispers and murmurs reached Mobian's ears. Perhaps he has some connection to the Moon Princess? Who knows the ways of the nobility? Marissa approached Mabian, greeting him with a smile. "I'm honored that you accepted my invitation, Your Grace." Duke Mabian. Mabian bowed respectfully in return. "Happy 21st birthday to you, heir to the Haiga family. May it be filled with joy and happiness." The crowd's attention shifted to SDO, who was quietly following behind him. "Wait, there's another black-haired man? Does the Haiga heir have a younger brother? Unbelievable." A voice suddenly rang out, laced with reproach. "Idiot, look at his uniform. That's the student council uniform." Mabian turned back to his companions. "All right," he said, "who's going to be the first to congratulate him?" Suddenly, a voice called out his name. "Lord Haiga." A man bowed respectfully before him. "It's been a while since I've seen you at an event like this. I trust you've been well." Mabian looked at the unfamiliar face before him, a confused expression on his face. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I don't recall who you are." The man quickly responded, understandingly, "My apologies." The young man smiled, introducing himself. "I am Rizzy Endymion. I succeeded to the position of head of the Endymion family at the beginning of this year." Mabian smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Ah, so you are the hero the princess has been waiting for." Mobian's words filled Rigi with joy and overwhelming happiness. "Your Highness, do you truly believe that?" Rigi asked hopefully. Mabian calmly replied, his voice as gentle as a breeze. "I heard you were waiting to see if I was the right one." A spark of hope flickered in Rigi's eyes. Inwardly, he sighed in relief. "As long as you're not a traitor," he thought to himself. Suddenly, Mabian asked with a puzzled expression, "But weren't you given a different name?" Rigi lowered his head in embarrassment, murmuring, "I'm ashamed to admit this, but it's true." Rigi's expression puzzled Mabian. "Why is that?" he wondered. Rigi stammered, hesitant to reveal the truth. My family situation is a bit complicated." SDO looked intently at Rigi, a thoughtful expression in his eyes. He sensed a deep sadness within Rigi. A child not recognized by the Holy Temple. Mabian should have understood the deeper meaning of that. He's definitely the type of person who is insensitive and incapable of understanding the pain of others. Continuing this conversation is just a waste of time. Seeing this, SDO called out to Mabian, "Esteemed Mabian." Suddenly, someone approached them, their voice filled with curiosity. "I find it quite strange. Why is my older sister's palace, a place usually so quiet and deserted, so bustling and lively today?" The person's robes stirred slightly, exuding an air of authority and power. "It seems as though we have a distinguished guest visiting." Mabian and SDO suddenly froze, surprise flickering in their eyes at the newcomer's appearance. Mabian bowed respectfully. "Mabian the Haiga, I humbly greet the fifth prince." Gus stepped forward, formally greeting him. "Welcome, Haiga. I am Gus, Ruber Raisin Akidian." Mabian glanced at Gus, offering a polite smile and greeting everyone present at the banquet. "Fifth Prince Gillis, Ruberazin Akidian." Mubian remained bowed, respectfully greeting him. Inwardly, he thought to himself, "What a surprise to run into you in such a bustling place." Marissa strode forward, a bright, enthusiastic smile on her face. "Gillis, he's coming over to greet you too." Marissa raised an eyebrow, her tone slightly reproachful. "You should have said hello as soon as you arrived. I just realized you were here." Gillis quickly apologized to his sister. "I'm sorry. I should have greeted you first." The siblings chatted animatedly, their laughter echoing cheerfully, causing SDO's group to be somewhat surprised. SDO remained silent, his gaze fixed on the two of them. Marissa kindly asked her brother, "You must be busy with your studies. Is it all right for you to take the time to come here?" Gillis smiled in response, appearing unconcerned. "It's my duty as someone close to the Emperor." Marissa expertly portrayed her heartache, shimmering tears rolling down her cheeks. She lamented, "I'm still so stiff and formal. Since growing up, I've lost the adorable charm I once had." Wayang politely greeted her older sister, offering sincere thanks. "Thank you for always caring for me. I must be going now." Marissa looked slightly surprised. "So soon? Just as I suspected, you're very busy." "I've been quite busy lately. I I wanted to personally give you a small gift. She produced a beautiful, exquisitely crafted red box, presenting the gift to her sister. Then, she opened the box, revealing a precious necklace carefully packaged inside. This is a sacred treasure. It possesses the power to heal all wounds. Marissa joyfully took the necklace, exclaiming, "It's beautiful." She quickly fastened the jeweled necklace around her neck, her face beaming with excitement, and promised her sister, "Thank you. I will always cherish it." Wayang suddenly hesitated. "Well, however," the boy glanced at Estio and Ma Bian, then questioned his older sister. "These squid dogs, this is your answer for me?" He shrugged indifferently, casually saying, "It's fine. I knew you would test me." Marissa broke out in a cold sweat at her little brother's perceptiveness. He knew that, and still came here? Suddenly, Gil rushed forward like a whirlwind. He hugged his sister tightly, declaring, "Because I showed you everything, I hid nothing from you. I want you to listen to one request of mine." Gil straightforwardly proposed, "You must always support me, okay? You're not allowed to abandon me." Marissa froze, stiffly hugging him back. Marissa exclaimed, her voice slightly emotional, "Gil," but out of her sight. Gil suddenly frowned, his eyes turning vicious, thinking to himself, "Don't you dare interfere with." Gus thought that Estio's warnings were directed at him. "You're an Esper. You can read minds, right? Right? Stay calm and don't be rash. I will protect you from those who threaten the Znai's association." These resolute words sent Estio into deep thought. Joel's eyes turned sharp, a menacing glint flashing within them. "But if you dare get in my way, I will destroy your association. Therefore, you would be wise to choose the next ruler of the Rubrigen throne carefully." A long moment passed. Ma Bian sighed and complained, "That brat is such a nuisance." He put his hands on his hips, his annoyance clear on his face. "He's nothing but a copy of the Emperor. Damn it, but he seems to be quite close to the princess." Becker smiled brightly, innocently replying, "He even brought her a gift." Seeing them so close, "I think the next generation will be very peaceful." Ma Bian shook his head, dismissing his words. "Peaceful? You're so naive. He won't just sit still. Because I'm not on the list of successors. In the traditional order." Parker was flustered, stammering, "Good heavens. Sir Mubian, how could this be?" The 5 princes all seemed to adore Princess Marissa. "Captain, what do you think?" Stio remained silent, seemingly oblivious to the chatter around it. Parker called out again, "Captain Stio." The young man was startled out of his deep thoughts. Stio hurriedly asked Parker, "I'm sorry." "Parker, what did you just say to me?" He was sweating, stammering in response. Nothing, it's nothing. But Captain..." Noticing Stio's heavy mood, Parker asked solicitously, "You seem lost in thought. Is something bothering you?" Stio was momentarily surprised. Then he clenched his fist, as if suddenly understanding. "Right? This feeling, it's worry." Estio hung his head, his face a mask of worry. "This wasn't good. I think we're in trouble." The group grew serious, silently waiting for him to explain. "I'm listening. What is it? What in the world happened?" Estio began to recount the details of the recent events. "Just a moment ago, the 5th prince..." A moment later, after Estio finished his story, Ma Bian exclaimed in shock, That was a blatant threat." He crossed his arms, his face flushed with anger. "This is no longer child's play." Parker's face paled, and he hurriedly urged, "Captain Sko, let's refuse this request. We need to leave here immediately." Ma Bian interrupted him, asking thoughtfully, "I agree, but is it even possible? Can we even escape from here?" Parker hesitated, his face growing even paler. "Her Highness the Princess warned us, if we fail, we'll lose our lives." Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows, beginning to analyze the situation. "But the objective has changed, hasn't it? This is no longer a simple mission like tracking down a traitor." The young man pondered the impending brutal conflict and exclaimed with a sigh, "This is a true war of succession." Lost in thought for a moment, Parker grew increasingly worried, hastily advising Stio, "Serious matters like this aren't something a small guild like ours should get involved in. We should heed the prince's warning. It would be better for all of us if we stopped here, even if it means displeasing Her Highness the Princess. The captain is capable enough to handle the consequences." Kai finally spoke up, expressing her own thoughts. "I understand. Actually, I anticipated this possibility." Parker exclaimed in surprise. "You knew about this?" Kai calmly replied, "Yes, but I always thought that things wouldn't become this dangerous." Her eyes filled with hope. She turned toward Stio. "What will you do, Captain Stio?" Stio shook his head without saying a word. "I'm not the one who makes the final decision. Marissa rushed into the room, suddenly interrupted their conversation. She spoke hurriedly. We're canceling the request. We'll send a cancellation fee right away. Please leave immediately. Saw let out a bewildered and suspicious sound. But don't breathe a word to anyone about what you read today. Marissa urgently warned Saw, her voice filled with tension. Listen, Saw. Exactly. You absolutely must not tell anyone what you read today, she said, sweat beading on her forehead, her expression filled with worry. Not even me. You don't need to see Duke Delphia anymore either. The request ends here. Marissa thought to herself, I don't want to know. It's better if I don't know. It will be fine if I don't find any evidence. At least, that's what I hope. That girl, she has no one on her side. Estio suddenly spoke up, as if reading Marissa's thoughts. He does. His words stunned Marissa into silence. Estio continued, his voice firm. The Duke is much more powerful than you think, Miss Marissa. He calmly expressed his thoughts. He didn't complain at all. He's been ready for this since he was very young. His plea, don't abandon me, was completely sincere. The boy's words stunned Marissa. She gritted her teeth, utterly furious. How dare you? Who allowed you to eavesdrop on my private thoughts? Once again, she sternly warned them. The only reason I treat you differently is because of a special request. Don't interfere in this matter anymore. Understanding her meaning, they all bowed their heads in obedience. We shall take our leave, obeying your command. Immediately afterward, they retreated, leaving the magnificent castle. Looking at the potted plant on the table, Marissa embraced the small flower pot, lost in silent thought. She traced the small leaves, recalling the words that Sticko had spoken. She paused. What if the boy was stronger than she imagined, and had been preparing to seize the throne? Some time passed. A sudden thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that they were all SEO betrayers? Outside the grand palace, the relentless rain continued to pour. After the banquet, Stio's group hurriedly departed, seeing Marissa still lost in thought. The worried handmaiden called out, Your Highness! Suddenly, Marissa turned and strode swiftly in a direction, startling the handmaiden. Your Highness! The handmaiden rushed after her, calling out loudly toward the departing group. Stop! She grasped Estio's hand, her voice stern. Tell me, how deeply can you understand another person's heart? How far? Estio quickly replied. How deep do you wish to know, Your Highness? Marissa's hands trembled.